People are like filling out my form on my website. To me, that is such an effortful move, even though I know it's like, it can be spammy. But if someone like Googled you, found your website, filled out your form and is like begging for a service you don't offer, I'm just like, oh man, like clearly there's a, to me that feels like a demand, you know? So maybe I should like supply it.
All right, Kacey, give me the background. Give me the story of what you were doing before becoming a designer/developer, and how you kind of decided to get into this.
Yeah, I think like a lot of folks, I was a pandemic-induced designer developer. Before then, I was working in restaurants and had been my entire life. I had like recently moved. I was like pivoting in restaurant world. I was like working in wine. I was a sommelier. And I had just moved. It was like, I want to say it's like 15 minutes before lockdown. You know what I mean? Like it was so it was like right there. Once lockdown happened, like I was in kind of the New York City area. So restaurants closed down pretty quickly. And I started like bookkeeping, which became virtual assistanting. Every single client I took, I ended up working on their website. I ended up working for a Squarespace designer, like just doing VA stuff. She would have me like check the links on new websites and kind of bring me into the process. She suggested like Squarespace, like a couple of courses. And then it just kind of like, it's always just been this like slow snowball effect where like one suggestion leads me there, leads me there, leads me there. Fast forward, once I was a developer, late 2023, or a designer, I was in a marketing class and the teacher was like, I'm sorry, did you say that you like development? You should just do development. And that was like another kind of pivot that ended in me pretty much doing exclusively development since. So that's a long and winding answer for a long and winding tale. There's just like,
that's good.
It's like constantly evolving.
I love that. I want to dive into specific aspects of that, but I also just want to say that I think that exactly what you described is the trait of people who end up being successful, which is just like following the path to where like it's instead of, because so many people, they will be like, oh, I want to do this thing, whatever it is. And then it's like, and then they think about it and they think about it and they think about it and they think about it. And then they think themselves out of it and they're like, oh no, that's not going to work for whatever reason. And I think just like putting one foot in front of the other and just deciding that like, you're just going to see where this path takes you is, I mean, it's also how I got here. It's like I started as like a travel blogger, ended up where I am now. And so that's, yeah.
Nothing was ever like a sweeping gesture, like a sweeping change. Nothing was ever like, I am now doing this. It was always just a little directional shift, but always a pivot and always like a little delusional. Like you have to embrace the like, now, no, let's go, you know? Otherwise you will probably end up convincing yourself to do something probably a little bit safer, you know, a little bit more predictable, you know?
Totally. What I call real jobs, like things in the world.
Sure. They're there.
Okay, so now you do full development for people.
Yes.
Do you have a background in that? How did you learn that? Like,
so I think that's kind of the thing with development in particular. I started my business in 2020, but I didn't really start developing until a couple of years ago. So there have been people who've started and surpassed me in like that time, right? In terms of maybe like how much money they're making or how many clients they have or like whatever they're doing. They may not be developers specifically, but they're like making just like gobs and gobs of money. And I'm kind of like, okay, that's cool. But with development, I had to learn how to develop, right? Like I had to learn how to program. And it takes time. So it's a little front loaded or like a little, like there's a lot of kind of like behind the scenes stuff that was happening, which is why all of the moves were kind of smaller, right? Because I would work for a client and no matter where a scope started, I would end up working on their Squarespace site, right? And most of the time when I was inspired in design, I would have to Google how to build it because there was something that I'd have to tweak beyond what was maybe possible, like or I'd have to like learn a new aspect of Squarespace to like unlock what was possible, right? And so I just like kept taking courses and kept taking classes and kept Googling things. And I just realized that in order to really bring what designs live in my head to life, I needed just like a touch, just like a little bit of CSS here, a little bit of CSS there. And then it again snowballed into me really liking it. And in Squarespace, you really have to do it manually. You really have to write it out and think about it in a way that I really like, and some people really do not. Again, it just kind of like took shape from there. But it really was one class led to another class. There's a person out there called Rach with Square Stylist, who is just a phenomenal teacher and has a really well designed program that it's really easy to start as a total novice, total beginner and go through it. And I just was stubborn and I just kept after it because it did not make sense for a really long time. And you know, and once it started making sense, I was excited about it and I wanted to like talk about it, and people wanted me to like help them figure out how to do it on their site, and it just kind of went from there. So
That's really good. Yeah, I know we actually have so many overlap, Rach and myself, with the students that we have. Like, it's very common. People end up taking both. So yeah.
totally, because there's a lot of things that I've learned, even though I can do, because I've like learned what Rach teaches, right? And Rach can do whatever she wants to a Squarespace site. She's so talented. She's like, she knows all of the codes and she like has all of the technique, right? But her thing and what I've learned and I think picked up from the both of you is like, use Squarespace first. Like the point is not to like hack into Squarespace.
Yeah.
It's a really powerful program. And 9 times out of 10, what designers come to me for, you really have to understand Squarespace before you do any code. The point is not to like, you know, I don't know, like do something just cause. Like most of the time there's something that we can do to like leverage what's already been built. And I think that's the thing, right? Where like you do have to really understand the platform. Otherwise, like it doesn't work. Like you can't just hack into it. Yeah.
You're actually really good to ask this question too, as well, because so many people ask me, they're like, oh, okay. Like when should I take Rachel's course? They serve two different slightly things. Can you talk to me about like, what did you get from the one and what did you get from the other? And like, how should someone make the choice of like, do they do one? Do they do the other? Do they do both? That would be really helpful, I think.
I took your courses first, and so that's like as my bias, and I would suggest people do that first because you have to learn the platform first. And I think your courses are really great at being like, we might call them hacks or cheats or like other ways around, but like it's actually just the way that you do it, you know? And I still use a lot of the things with like overlapping images on sections, doing things like, you know, adding a shape block to extend the color, to put the image. That's just a construction, optical illusion, really. And I could do that using advanced code techniques, or I could just like utilize what's already there. And I think before you go into like learning CSS and JavaScript, I think it's like really important that you learn the platform itself and like what it's capable of and how to do the things that people actually want, you know, because like if you're going to be developing, like you can learn all of the bells and whistles, but if you're going to be running a business, you need to be learning how to do the things that people want frequently. Mostly it's about spacing and alignment and responsiveness and less about things spinning and moving and, you know, like racing across the screen. And it's about translating a designer's heading tag hierarchy into one that like works for like SEO and stuff, you know, and kind of like figuring out their like type systems and things like that. It's far less about like bells and whistles and more about like good construction. So if you can do that and you know all of the little things that especially your courses teach, definitely start there, because then you can like figure out what people want, and then you can figure out if you even need to learn and want to learn all of the CSS stuff.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think it's really great advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's going to be super useful. Someone's going to ask you that question. I'm going to be like, here's what Kacey said.
That's it. Yeah, because you don't need to learn all of that stuff. I really like it, you know, and I really like learning the programming languages and I like getting really into it. But like, I don't need to do that in order to do what I do, you know?
Yep, that makes sense. Okay, cool. Now tell me about, so the business model, I guess you could say, of being a developer is slightly different than a website designer because typically
sure.
your clients are other designers. So
Yes.
talk to me about like what it is that you offer, who you typically offer it for, and yeah, we'll start with that.
I think my development business model even differs slightly from other developers that I've seen. And I think what is standard and I think makes a lot of sense is a lot of developers work on like an hourly basis and they have maybe sort of like sets of hours that they do or like estimates that they work within. And, you know, they have communication around extending those hours or, you know what I mean? And that's how they budget. And I feel like that makes a lot of sense, especially if you're like a seasoned developer and you know exactly how long things take and you don't tinker, you know, and you don't need to like, you know, spend a little time zhuzhing, but I need the tinker time and I need the zhuzh time. And I don't necessarily think it needs to fall to the client to pay for that necessarily. And so I offer like a flat rate development model. There's other controls that I have, right? It's not just like the Wild West and I just like charge flat rate and we can do whatever. But the big thing that I offer is what I call a dev session. And it's a 2-week development sprint. The first week is development. The second week is support. And I charge a flat rate for that. But then because of that, we need to be really organized going into it. We need to have a lot of like, we need to know exactly what's going on before going into it. To me, it lends to a more organized, like a more predictable timeline. I've been doing them now for about a year and it's like, they're like smooth, you know, because it's all front loaded. There's mock-ups and assets and copy and photos and like all of that stuff is already done. And I just go in and build it. And I'm building it from not existing to launch essentially in those 2 weeks. So because of that, because it's like this 2-week sprint, it's really not, so it's not really sprint. It doesn't feel like a sprint. It's actually pretty chill because it's so organized. You know what I mean? But we do a lot of front end communication. So if you're starting in March, we're talking in February. Like, do you need help from me on this? Like, do we need to discuss certain things? You as a designer may not even know what I can build. Like, can you even do that? I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I can even do this, you know, and like those kind of conversations are happening. So it's typically Squarespace designers. And now it's really designers who work with multiple platforms. You don't have to just be a Squarespace designer to work with me because I'm the Squarespace person who's coming in. Typically there's Squarespace experience and the designers because you really need a little bit of that language to, I think, design effectively. And with those 2 weeks, it's like I start the site, I build it. At the end of the week, we're transferring ownership. Through that week, there's like revisions and we want this and we want that. I'm also like building the terms and conditions page and the privacy policy and the site credits and adding the favicon and like making sure the domain is connected and submitting it to Google Search Console. And at the end of it, it's finished, you know? And sometimes I'm working with designers who are doing it to their own personal brand websites, which is really cool because then we can really like get into it because they're both the designer and the client, you know, and we can really like go for it. It has a different kind of style or like a different texture the projects typically do if that's the case. And then I'm also working with those same designers on their clients. And so I've done like personal brands. I've done like someone who's a crochet artist. I've done a stud farm in England. I've done like a dentist, a doctor, a dermatologist, like all sorts of industries. But it's because they're going to these like specific designers who are outsourcing development to me. So it's really a very interesting
range
view of what's happening. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I love this. So interesting. Okay. So are these designers, are they typically like graphic designers or they're also website designers, but they're just very nervous around the coding front? Or are they just like graphic designers who don't do websites at all and just then outsource this bit? Or
so most of them are like Squarespace web designers who offer various kind of custom projects. Typically, I'm not working with like templated things. I've like helped someone build a template before, but that was like kind of early on. And that typically it's these kind of like bigger projects, kind of like 5 to 20 pages. Typically they have a blog, maybe like a merch or two, something like that. But they're really people who are the client or the designer themselves are migrating to Squarespace, or is like typically the answer, but that also means that the designer themselves are typically already on Squarespace, but their designer or their clients are coming to Squarespace.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. And then in terms of how much is the designer giving you and what are you doing? So like you have the ability obviously to build in Squarespace and then also like develop and custom code certain things, CSS and Zhuzh. Are they coming to you with like a layout, or they're just giving you the client's content? How much stuff are they giving you to start this project?
They're giving me like a fully fleshed, final approved mockup.
Okay.
And I'm building it based off of the mockup. When you use programs like Figma, you can build like a full website. And that's not what we're doing. These designers aren't having to like animate anything in Figma, but typically we have it set to like a certain like desktop dimension, right? So typically it's set to like 1680 or 1440, something like a standard screen size, because obviously a mockup is static and I'm making it responsive. So there's translation that happens, but there's a mockup of the homepage, of the about page, of the contact page, of a blog post. Typically there's like a Google folder of all of the assets, right? The copy is typically final on the mockup as well, which is where I get like a line height and like I can see like the typography systems. So it's definitely again, like kind of like a front loaded design system. And because of that, it's already sort of like niched down, right? It's not necessarily like a specific industry or like a specific style, but most of these designers are comfortable with design programs and are utilizing that tool as means of like client communication. So the client has already approved the site before I build it. And so like, and everything is kind of finished. And that is what's interesting, I think, about the developers, because I don't communicate necessarily with the client. Like I'm present, and a lot of what I do is I try to bring hospitality to development. I try to be present. I will absolutely answer your questions and explain things, which I think is definitely a part of the development world, but it's not its reputation.
Yeah.
And so I want to be there without having too many cooks in the kitchen. And so I'll like record tutorials on sections that I code, but it really is, I could come in last minute. I can be booked 6 months out. It really depends. And this month was a good example where someone booked me last year for this month, and then someone else booked me like a week out. And those were like my 2 dev sessions this month, and I was like, yeah, let's roll. Okay, cool. And it worked out because the offer is still kind of the same no matter what, And so if a designer's coming to me multiple times, then we just kind of do the same thing again.
Yep. Totally. I love that. Okay. Yeah. And I think that's really something interesting for people to know, is that people do book projects like 6 months or a year in advance. And I know that sounds bananas, but like you've clearly seen it happen. So is that frequent with clients, or just like every now and again?
I think what's interesting is that there are definitely clients out there who are not in that kind of rush. I feel like that's actually something that I've been paying attention to more when I'm booking projects is the client like, I need this website yesterday? And if they are, do they have everything prepared and ready? And they just happen to need it yesterday is something. But that like, we need this so fast that I can't even explain, you know what I mean? It's just this like weird rush. And then there are clients out there who are like approving things and working on things, but the timeline is much, much longer. And I've noticed that it's actually pretty like designer specific. A designer's like, the mockup is ready when they book me. Things need to get adjusted, but like, the website doesn't need to be built yesterday. And so we're not necessarily moving. Somebody will call me on a Monday and be like, the client needs this by Monday, like, what can we do? And then that's a different kind of conversation, but it's not everyone. And I find that the bigger the website, typically, it's not like the client is like chill and is like build it whenever.
Yeah.
But it's not this like rush.
Yes.
And my week long build is not meant to be a rush. It's like when everything is like organized and ready to go, like we can move at a clip and this can be done really quickly. And the reason really why I do that too is I don't want the project to get stalled at development, and it just happens all the time where the developer ghosts, or they're over here, they're over there, or it's hourly and they ran out of hours and they need to wait, and it's like approval, and it's just like feels so complicated that I want it to be like smooth. As soon as you book me, we know when I start, we know when we finish. And when it's a flat rate, I just work until it's done, and I charge enough to where that makes sense for the both of us, you know? And it works, you know? And then I can like and I do other things. I do like office hours, which is where someone can just book me for the hour. And then we can like hang out for an hour and I can like do stuff. But I do want to say, kind of going back, what I noticed is that the people who were reaching out to me wanted really advanced code. They weren't coming to me for like basic websites, right? And that's when I realized, I was like, oh, okay. Like people aren't just going to be like, hey, can you just like put my website together? Can you just like assemble it? They wanted like really intense stuff that they'd seen. They're like, what is this? You know, and they wanted me to build it. And that's when it became the offer that it was. It was never, I would have loved to like assemble a website for somebody without using code. That'd be fun. But that was definitely never, I don't think anyone ever asked me to do that.
Interesting. That is fascinating. And I love how you just like described that model so beautifully. And what I can tell from what you're saying as well is that you have very clearly taken care of your clients very well, and you're very conscious of like what makes sense for everyone here, and that you're really like designing this process and everything to be very smooth and very enjoyable for the client. So I love that.
Yeah, I want you to know how much it's going to cost, and I also want it to be something where like, and I am available for your questions. Like I don't book multiple dev sessions at a time. So like when I'm building your site that week, like that's my job that week. So like, you know, I think it really works. You know, I think with the hourly, it's common, I think, for certain developers to stack projects and to work on multiple projects at the same time. And I don't know, maybe I'm old, but I'm just like not a great multitasker. I just like want to focus. I want to like put on some music and just like get into it. And I have like a system now. And so I just kind of like set it up every time, and it feels good, you know, and then I can like chill out on the weeks that it's not that, you know.
That's amazing. Okay, I love this.
Yeah.
Talk to me about so honestly, there's probably a lot of web designers watching this. Tell me about your pricing. Like, what are your offers?
Sure.
Like if someone wants to hire you.
Yeah, like right now, what I say is I've been like finagling with the pricing, and I think I figured it out. So for the dev session for 2 weeks, I say it's 5 pages of like custom coding. So it can be a bigger site than that, but we're talking like, that's kind of the cap that I'm putting on me being in like a hacker mode, trying to like write all of the code, right? And the scope is that it needs to be like built in a week. Mockups are submitted, assets, things like that. Everything is kind of like set ahead of time. That the dev session is $37.50, and that's kind of my standard scope. Now, people have come to me for larger projects. The websites are bigger. The custom coding is a little bit more advanced. The budget is higher, you know, and so then I do have like extended scope pricing, and that is really when I can like, we can really like kind of turn up the volume on a lot of different things. Like we can do extended like support, ongoing support, things like that. Because especially if you are a stud farm in England and you just need someone to like help you out for the first 2 months that you have your website, like they can hire me directly and they don't necessarily have to go through the designer or whatever situation needs to happen. So that's my dev session. I have a dev day offer, which I love. I love this offer, and it's taken a lot of forms and has succeeded and failed multiple times, but I'm not getting rid of it. I'm just going to keep tinkering with it, because it's a daily rate, right? Where I want somebody, I guess it's kind of like a VIP day, but it's like a dev for a day. And the weakness of it is that it's so varied in what can happen. If somebody wants something really simple, we can do so much of it. And also, if someone wants something really complicated, it could take up the whole day, And so it's a little bit difficult in that sense. And so I have that as like a back end offer for folks if something needs to happen, especially like on an extended scope. And then I have my hourly, which are my office hours, which I love. People will just book me for an hour and it's so varied. We'll do anything from fixing spacing with like coding where I'm literally like padding left 2 pixels on this box, but we're doing it together. So it like looks, the way it does. And there's so much fun. So those are kind of my prices as of now and my offers as of now. And I typically don't do stuff that's like super outside of those scopes, just so I can stay focused and keep everything scheduled and know that I'm not double booking,
Totally. Yep. No, that makes perfect sense. I love that. And I feel like that's also a really good thing. Like there was a few times, so I am not the best with the coding. And there was a few times where I was like, I just need someone to like for this like one thing. And that's like, I love that you have the office hours. I think that's incredible.
Yeah. Because that's so easy. Because if I collect like a code toolkit, which is like the whole thing. All of the courses suggest you do that, right? Where once I have something built and I like it, I save it to where it can easily kind of be implemented and built again, right? And it really kind of depends on, that's like step one of any scope. Do I already have the code or not? And then we can go from there. And with office hours, and especially if you've built something, you love it, the site is a year old, your client reaches out and is like, I kind of saw this cool thing. Is it even possible? Then that's so much easier to then implement something that's like been inspired kind of down the road. The site doesn't need to be rebuilt. It's not a complete overhaul, but you would love that thing to spin, and then you're like, yeah, let's make it spin. It's so easy,
That's so good. Okay. I love this.
Yeah.
Okay. And then talk to me about your client finding or marketing method. I freaking love your Instagram. I was just on it earlier and I was like, man, personality is just so good with this one. Anyways, yeah. Is Instagram a major marketing thing for you, or is it actually coming through other ways, or?
It's funny because Instagram is one of those things where it's kind of my first foray into what I was going to be doing for marketing. And it's definitely the thing that comes up the most. It's definitely the most kind of like referenced, but I will say that my clients come from the classes that I take. And I recently done this and recently had conversations around this because there was so much effort going into Instagram and kind of like meta threads I love. But I wasn't being very conscious of like a work-life marketing balance. And was taking way too long and was just like, it was just hours and hours and hours to do something that I could have maybe built a process around or something. I don't know. And what I was noticing was that I was learning a lot of that from courses that I would then come back and we would like discuss it. And like sometimes in those courses would be like social media marketers or other designers, or typically it wasn't developers, right? And so I was being influenced by other folks, which is great, like in a peer-to-peer way. And then when we were finished, we kind of had this like relationship, and then they would call me to develop their website. And so it was like, yes, Instagram, and yes, those marketing channels, because it's still things that I filmed a year ago are still being viewed and circulated, not on like a viral level, but are still able to get my point across. It was almost like the building of that Instagram in the class was actually kind of the thing that led to the clients. So I'm kind of currently right now, my marketing is taking classes, and not taking courses in the sense that I'm like staying in school and not going out on my own, but really like utilizing the fact that there are people out there who like found the same course as you, enrolled in it at the same time as you, or interested in learning the same things as you. And you're like, there's so many things to kind of like learn from that. So that's kind of the big thing. And of course, I mean, honestly, threads more than Instagram, and then courses more than threads.
That's
so
interesting.
courses, threads, Instagram is probably
Cool.
mine. Those are my 3 marketing big things.
That is fascinating. Tell me,
Yeah.
okay, so when it comes to the courses, some people might wonder, like, how do you market yourself in like a course or a course community? Or like, how's this happening? Is it like courses that have live cohorts that you're kind of meeting the other people on Zoom calls, or what? Describe that.
I mean, yeah. So sometimes they're live cohorts, right? Sometimes like mastermind type things. And those I love. I guess I'm a school kid, and it's not a networking technique. It's literally just building. It's just friends.
Yep.
It's just, you're just like, hey, and you just make a friend. And it's not like I'm not trying to leverage anything. And most of the time I'm actually being like really vulnerable and scared in those things. I'm just like, I don't even know if I know what I'm doing. I'm not showing up like, hey, my perfect offer, and I think that's also helpful, is that someone's coming to you because you've built a real friendship and a real relationship. And there's a lot of respect in the sense that they're like, there's not like, they're like coming and being like, okay, here's your rate and now let's work together. It's not like a friends and family or like people trying, you know what I mean? And I love a friends and family. I love a lanyap, but like, it's really nice to also have people be like, I'm going to hire you, and even in classes like the non-live cohorts where you have some sort of like chat community or some sort of something, I'm as just like everybody else, where sometimes I'm super involved and sometimes I like am on a vacation or something like that. And I'm not always there, but I'm always checking in and like looking at other things and getting, I call it like, to me, this is a good thing, like getting jealous of other people's work.
Yeah.
Where someone is like, look what I just did. And I'm like, how did you do that? And I'm like, who is this person? And I just like old fashioned figure out who that person is and maybe reach out and say that their work is cool, and like, that's, to me, that's the only way that it feels good. Otherwise I just like spending more time than that, like on Instagram and stuff, doesn't feel as good as like trying to like meet people in like a asynchronous course community.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. I love that. And I feel like this marketing strategy fits you really well too, because yeah, you're just a very personable person. And so I feel like
I'm not necessarily working with like off the street clients. Like I'm not necessarily like finding industries or businesses. Like I'm working with other designers or other developers or graphic designers or photographers, like whatever, like you're saying, copywriters. I think developers and copywriters should all be best friends, because that's like such a meeting place of so much of the functionality of a website. And so I think that's like, anytime I can kind of rub elbows with other industry folks in a way that, we're like all in it together. We're not trying to sell to each other, but we are all like really good at what we do. And you can also
hire
me
if you want to.
Yeah, it's fine. And it's like, that it's going to be okay. You know what I mean? Like, it's trusted,
100%. I love that. Okay. All right, just a few more for you. The one which I want to know is, tell me about like sommelier life versus developer life. What does your life look now? How is it different than previously in a normal real world job?
It's so different because restaurants are unlike corporate. Like restaurants, I mean, I'm sure some restaurants are corporate. There's a corporate aspect. But the biggest thing is that to work at a restaurant, you have to be at the restaurant. And so I was just at that place for so many hours every day. Being a sommelier taught me so much, and just restaurants in general teach you so much about people and people as like a group, like kind of like performance with an audience. Like you sort of learn dynamics in a way that is, I think, really invaluable. You can't sell a bottle of wine to somebody who doesn't drink, right? So like, you can just not, I've learned, don't waste your time. Like, it's not about walking up to every single person in the restaurant and seeing if they want to buy a bottle of wine. It's about like going to the person who specifically wants to get a bottle of wine and making their experience the best, right? Everyone in the restaurant's getting fed. Everyone is like doing their thing, right? But I think bringing all of that stuff into my business now is absolutely the hospitality angle, where if I'm building a website for you, like, we are going to be best friends. Like, what's up? Who are you? What's up? how are you? How did you get to this place? This photo is amazing. I love this color. I can't wait to build this. I'm so excited about it. Like, this is not like a cold transactional, like I'm your developer. I'll see you in a week. Like, this is much more fun than that. I don't know. It's like the only way that I can be. And I think that it is so different working at home. I'm not at a restaurant. I'm not surrounded by people. I don't have all of the input of a busy restaurant, right? Of all of the things. I just sitting at my desk, typing away, but my brain is still there. My brain is absolutely still like putting the pieces and the puzzles together. So it's still mentally engaging, but I like the course aspect. I like the fact that I can like engage in a way that isn't necessarily to sell, but that I'm actually like building real relationships and friendships that are online because I'm not surrounded by 300 people every Friday night,
Yep.
Thank God. Honestly, thank God. It's a good thing. But I do have to supplement that interaction with other things. And that is very real. Yeah.
Yes. No, I totally agree with you. It's like when you first start a business and work by yourself in your house all day, I got very conscious and observed like I need to schedule social time at least 2 to 3 days a week because otherwise this does not work. Yeah.
And it's like not like it'll be fine if I don't. Like, no, you need to go outside, and you need to like meet up with that person for coffee. Like you just do. And it's like really necessary, and you doesn't have to be much deeper than that, And then you can go back to your cave. You absolutely have to leave the house. I think especially with development, it's such a no one understands it, right? No one really gets it. And so there's a lot of times when someone is like, can you just scoot that over a little bit? That you're just like, oh, yes, and you just like think about all of the stuff. No one's doing anything wrong, right? And so there just like takes a lot of, I just have to take a walk about it, and that feels really good. It feels like there's balance already built in.
Yeah, I love that. That's good. Okay. Talk to me about the question, which I always need to ask is you've been through the courses. If someone is on the fence, what would you say? You've been through them, you've seen them. What are your thoughts and opinions?
Squarespace can teach you Squarespace all day. But I think it's really important when you're using a platform like Squarespace to learn it through the lens of somebody who uses it for real, for other people, and specifically for people who pay them, like for like a professional client experience. It's very different than someone who like, builds for fun or builds for their family or something, because you not only do you understand Squarespace, right? Like you can teach somebody something that like Squarespace has a help article for, sure. But what you are teaching is like you are teaching somebody like how to actually use it. And I feel like that's the difference between like a new fancy thing getting dusty in the corner and you actually using it. And I think that if you are considering building a website for somebody and charging money for it, I think that you should absolutely enroll in a course taught by somebody who's doing that, because it is so much more than just Squarespace. It's so much more than just the clients. You need someone to teach you like how to bring it together. And if you're on the fence, I think you're already there. Just do it, like just do it, learn, engage with everybody, like actually get involved, dedicate time to it, learn what there is. And then you can like do whatever you were going to do, to begin with, it'll only help.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that's great advice too. It's not just take it, but like take it and then actually do the thing, which is
actually do the thing. And that if you think that the course is going to like it, there's no abracadabra, that you do actually, and if you actually want to develop, like I develop every single day. Even if I'm not working for a client or developing a client, I have to do curly brackets and like hyphens every single day. Otherwise I get rusty and I get noticeably slower. And so the more I practice, the faster I am, and the more I can like, the more it's easy, the more it's chill, the more it doesn't stress me out at all. And if I take a week or two off, or I'm like not focusing on it or spending too much time on Instagram, I can tell that I'm like a little off. So you have to use it, you know what I mean? And you might as well like get in the habit of spending X amount of hours a week or a day or whatever you have, on these courses. So it's just good practice.
Okay. Talk to me also. You are looking at also offering Shopify development. because you've gotten a bananas number of inquiries lately. Tell me about your inquiries
Bananas.
lately, and then tell me about the Shopify idea too.
So like I love Squarespace, and I've been really lucky to like expand the number of designers that I'm working with and the number of projects. I've been really busy. Late last year, early this year, it's been really, there's like so much is happening with Squarespace. But in that same amount of time, I was saying that I get like 2 or 3 people reaching out like every week for like something. They don't always work out, right? But between November and January of this year, which is not a time where a lot of people are like reaching out to me about projects, typically things are booked, I got 12 people reaching out about Shopify. And it was like random strangers. These are not like referrals. People like found my name somewhere and were kind of begging me to help them with their Shopify site. And it's an example of another small move, which is something where I was like, I mean, I could ignore this. Like I could just be like, nope, sorry. Or I could like enroll in a Shopify class, which I just did, because it just seems like people need it.
Yeah.
And I'm here for that. And the same person, and Rach at Standout Squarespace, has a Shopify course.
Oh,
So
that's perfect. Oh, that's so
yeah.
cool. I didn't realize she had a Shopify course. That's cool.
And so it's just like the same techniques, just on a different platform. So on my end, it's a very efficient way, I think, to learn that platform.
Yeah, definitely. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that for you. I think makes perfect sense. Like we don't need to be just married to one thing if we don't want to. Like you can.
And that's the thing. Like Squarespace isn't going anywhere. I love Squarespace, and we were talking about Circle Day earlier. I really loved like what the CEO had to say, and I wasn't necessarily planning on loving what the CEO had to say. I'm not like I don't like need to love something blindly. You know what I mean? But I really liked the like developments that they're making. I really liked the fact that he wants like bigger brands and stuff to come to Squarespace, which I think is really cool. But there's also a lot of e-commerce brands out there who like will benefit from Shopify. And I think that it's also important for somebody maybe to know the difference between the two. And there's a lot of people out there who know the difference between the two, but I want to get on that conversation as well. Squarespace isn't going anywhere in my heart and soul.
Yeah.
But there's room for Shopify. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is like, there's room for you doing both. And so that's fantastic. And if it enables you to take on the 12 inquiries in like a matter of months.
I was like 12. Because I have like a CRM. Notion is my heart and soul. And I have a CRM of everyone who like fills out my form. And that's the other thing. People are like filling out my form on my website. To me, that is such an effortful move, even though I know it's like, it can be spammy, but if someone like Googled you, found your website, filled out your form and is like begging for a service you don't offer, I'm just like, oh man, like clearly there's to me that feels like a demand, so maybe I should like supply it. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And I'm so happy for you that like, how long have you been running this for now at this point, would you say? Like since you started doing
Dev specifically is only 2024. Wow. And so I'm going into my second year. Cool. And it has been like a really quick turnaround. I think as a designer, I was kind of, I was so young, 2022. What even were we doing then? But it feels like that. It feels like I was just a wee babe. And, but now development has been since my first launch, I guess, was February of 2024. And it's taken different shapes since then, but this is like my first.
Yeah, refining the exact offer. But that's incredible that like, also, again, that just shows the demand of it. It's like, okay, you've been doing this like a year and then you, over like Christmas time, you could bajillion inquiries. That's awesome. Right.
And if only I would have like crammed Shopify into that learning experience. No regrets doing it now. But yeah, it is interesting to see. And who knows if it was just, who knows what was happening. It could have been like a weird update that Shopify had that people, who knows what that actually was. But maybe it's one of those things where like you start to notice like a red car or something and you see them everywhere. Well, I started noticing it and it's like, it hasn't shut up. So yeah, it does. It feels good that there's like progress. It feels good that there's like, I think I would get a little antsy if I was running a business where it didn't feel like there was another level And so I like feel as engaged as like an entrepreneur as I do a developer.
Yeah. And it does make logical sense to me that on Shopify, people need more development work because it's just a more complicated platform to use. So that's why, yeah.
Yeah, I just started the course and I was like, oh, like, okay. No, yeah. I'm going to reach out to those 12 folks any moment now.
Yeah. Totally. Okay, amazing. Thank you so much.
Of course. Yeah.
Wasn't that inspiring? Hearing real success stories like this reminds us that building the business of your dreams is absolutely possible, and it starts with finding the right clients. Now, the best client finding method isn't about chasing the latest trend or jumping on every shiny object. It's about truly discovering a client finding strategy that feels natural, works for you, and helps you connect with the clients that you actually want to work with. So, if you want to figure this out for yourself, you can take my quiz, Which Client Finding Method Matches Your Personality Type? And in it, you will uncover the perfect way to land your dream clients without the overwhelm or the endless trial and error. So click the link below or head to paigebrunton.com/quiz to take the quiz. And then you can start building your web designer dream business today. I can't wait to hear which marketing strategy result that you got.